The Leung family consisted of 5 family members, 2 children, and their grandma, their mother, and also their father.
Immigrants began to come to San Francisco and California as early as 1838, but it wasn't until around the 1850s that a huge number of Chinese immigrants came. This huge number was due largely to the discovery of gold in California in 1849. The Chinese immigrants were mainly farmers when they lived in China. They left their homes due to the political and economic problems occurring in China around the 1840s and 1850s. This push, along with the pull of the discovery of gold and the beginning of the gold rush, drove Chinese immigrants to leave China and to come to San Francisco. The Chinese immigrants hoped to come to San Francisco in the hopes of making a lot more money than they previously did in China. They planned to then return back to their home country and return to their families and villages as newly successful and wealthy men. Though most Chinese immigrants came here due to the gold rush, searching for gold in California wasn't their only working position. They also took part in agricultural jobs, factory work, laundry services, and various restaurants. Asian American immigrants were particularly important and valuable in the building of the Transcontinental Railroad in the West.
The Chinese all lived together in communities and neighborhoods that consisted of either Chinese immigrants. It was through this that they were able to maintain their culture, because truth was many Americans looked down upon the Chinese American immigrants. They considered them racially inferior and culturally inferior. The Americans saw the Chinese American immigrants as being too different. For them, their culture and customs weren't normal, and nothing like they were accustomed to. And they believed in the Chinese American immigrants would never be able to assimilate successfully into the American culture. Even though the Chinese were considered to be inferior, the Chinese laborers were able to become successful. This in turn led to the anti-Chinese sentiments, in which Americans began to become resentful and jealous of them, leading to a series of injustice towards the Chinese.
But enough of this background information. How about we take a look into the typical life of a first-generation Chinese immigrant family? This is a story of Chinese immigrant Leung family living in Chinatown in San Francisco in 1882. Their story began in 1849 when the first 325 Chinese immigrants arrived in San Francisco in Chinatown. Here is a typical day having a meal with their family. You get the chance to see their family structure and culture unfold, having them inhabit a family centered through wellness and communication.
What's for dinner, Mom? Today's dinner is chow mein, fried rice, and pork. Where's Dad?
I'm here.
How's work? I know you've been working long hours ever since anti-Chinese riot. We were so glad you made it home. We were so worried, especially after the event that happened last night.
I'm not sure what the future is like. Last night, I heard rioters chanting, "The Chinese must go."
How bad was the damage at the docks?
It was worse than I thought. The Pacific Mail Steamship Company is going to struggle, but I'm just glad my family is okay.
In 1877, anti-Chinese riots took place in San Francisco. After the Great Depression, 20,000 Asian American immigrants were out of work. They built their own successful businesses, which began to flourish in the midst of the struggling economy. People began to envy the immigrants' success. People couldn't believe that these culturally inferior immigrants were doing better than them, and they wanted them out of their country. This became the reason for the riots. On the night of July 23, 1877, rioters took to the streets and took matters into their own hands. They destroyed laundromats, restaurants, and businesses ran by Asian American immigrants. Rioters lit docks on fire that belonged to the Pacific Mail Steamship Company. These riots caused over $100,000 in damage and 4 deaths.
This is so scary. How can they do this to us?
I'm just glad Grandpa's safe in China because he could have been working with you.
You miss him, don't you?
I miss Grandpa.
We must remain loyal to our 5 constant virtues: goodness, rightness, ritual, wisdom, credibility. I just hope Grandpa makes it home before Chinese New Year.
Little did they know, Grandpa wouldn't make it to America for a very long time. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act prevented immigrants from China and forbade the Chinese who were already in the U.S. from becoming U.S. citizens. This was the first time America ever singled out one ethnic group from immigrating to the United States, going against a previous treaty that allowed open immigration.
Children of Chinese laborers living in the United States. The act exacerbated the unbalanced sex ratio even further in the already male-dominated communities. To illustrate, in 1860, the sex ratio of males to females was already 19:1. In 1890, the ratio widened to 27:1. In order to sustain their population after the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was an immeasurable amount of illegal immigration. The Chinese had created an intricate system of immigration fraud known as paper sons. Thousands of men, and far fewer women, purchased documents that enabled them to begin new lives under false identities, with reconstructed citizenship status, marital status, names, and personal pasts. The identity papers were established by American citizens of Chinese descent who would travel back to China and return claiming a marriage and the birth of several sons and sometimes daughters. Years later, young Chinese individuals would appear claiming to be the children of these citizens. The immigrant would need to memorize the information on his false papers in order to pass the interrogation at the American port of entry. The San Francisco earthquake of 1906 and its resulting fire destroyed a significant number of immigration and birth records, offering the opportunity for the paper son scheme to expand. As more immigrants claimed citizenship, an immigration station on Angel Island in San Francisco Bay was established in 1910 and remained effective until 1940. When immigration authorities caught wind of the paper son system, the interrogation process became more rigorous and intensive, requiring immigrants to memorize increasingly detailed information. They would need to remain vigilant in order to avoid contradictions or mistakes in their testimony, or risk being denied entry and deported. The geographic stability of San Francisco's Chinatown is remarkable and noteworthy. Even after enduring half a century of earthquakes, fires, and urban renewal, it has remained the same neighborhood with the same rich culture. Chinatowns have traditionally been the places where Chinese Americans lived, worked, shopped, and socialized. Although